Yeah.
Here we go.
All right. Welcome back. And we have another exciting session for you as Mindy and Stacy share some of the commonly requested training and development, a topic around coaching skills for leaders. So I am going to hand off to Stacy and Mindy and Stacy. Thank you. And we look forward to this program.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I will share my screen and just want to encourage everyone to open up your chat box and please stay interactive during our time today.
Yes, we're going to have lots of areas for you to get to interact with us today. And hang on, this is just, there we go. Like I couldn't see everybody. All right, so welcome everyone to Coaching Skills for Leaders. My name is Mindy McManus, and I am a certified ICF coach at the PCC level. And I also have my master's degree in leadership and organization development. Stacy, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm happy to be here today. My name's Stacy Wynn, and I am also a professionally certified coach. And I am coming to you from my role as VP of Talent Management at Right Management Florida Caribbean. We're happy to be here today.
Ooh, Florida Caribbean.
I'm in the Florida part of Florida and Caribbean.
Yeah, I'd be like, I think I need to go to the Caribbean part. Can you guys hiring? I'm just kidding. Right, so let's move into our next slide. Stacy, so much. So we do have some learning objectives for us today. And really these are the learning objectives that we find that work most and best for our leaders. So one of the things that's a common misconception is what is coaching and what's the difference between coaching and leadership roles with managing, coaching, and mentoring. We're also going to recognize that active listening is key. We continue every single leadership program that I put together, whether I'm talking about coaching or not. Listening is always a piece of that because just because listening seems like common sense doesn't mean that the active listening is commonly practiced. So we're going to talk about the key to building engagement, connections, and empathy. And then we're going to have an opportunity to practice some powerful questions that enable us to gain information, demonstrate interest, and maximize accountability for self and others. So what we would like for you to do now is, because you're going to get a chance to be coached today, one of the things we want you to think about is a scenario or maybe a conversation that you're stuck on, something that you just have had a hard time moving past. So if there's a conversation that you had, or you have a conversation coming up, you're not quite sure how to work through that conversation, think through some of those difficult circumstances that you might have had over the past 2 weeks, and think through those as we're going through some of our steps today. Now, the other thing is, I also wanted to talk to you about, you're going to be sitting through here and think about all the people that need to go through this class, but they're not here today. But who is here today is you, and we want you to learn. And so as you're going through this topic, we want you to be thinking about yourself and how you can apply it to yourself and how you can use it to leverage to really exponentially increase and transform your leadership.
Yeah. And Mindy, we'll invite everyone to open up the chat box. As you have insights or reflections or thoughts, please place them out there. We will be moderating that chat box as we go. And, I don't know about you, Mindy, but I also love to see some of the reactions.
Me too.
Yeah. So we love to interact with all of you. So use that reactions button as we go and make it a little bit more colorful for us during the workshop. All right, Mindy, you want to share some of these excellent resources?
Absolutely. We can't go any further without talking about the outcomes of coaching. We know that we've had a session earlier today, and we've had a session later this afternoon into the ROI of coaching, but we really want to focus on what's the effectiveness of coaching? What do people really get out of it? And when leaders take the commitment and invest in themselves to get professional coaching, some of the outcomes that we have found, and there's many of different types of citations and best practice research that's out there. So these are just a few. So when leaders go through coaching, the outcomes that we see is improved well-being, job satisfaction, improved leadership behaviors, decreased emotional exhaustion, and I'm only looking at the ones that I've highlighted, fulfillment and meaning at work, and then leadership self-efficacy. The outcomes of coaching and getting professional leadership coaching are huge. So think about if you could leverage some of these skills that we use as a coach to help you level up your leadership.
Yeah.
So let's look at the different hats that you have to wear as a leader. Sometimes you have to manage. There's still that managing piece that we have to do. And then there's that piece of the coach, which we hope that we're able to add in as one of your hats that you can use. And then there's that mentor. And there's a lot of misconceptions around coaching and mentoring. I went to a symposium not too long ago and someone was like, I was expecting my coach to teach me. Well, coaching is not about teaching. And mentoring is a way of teaching. Coaching is not about teaching. Coaching is about a partnership. And we'll talk about the definition a little bit later of a partnership between you and your client or you and your employee to help them find their own answers. So as a coach, we're not there to give you the answers. We're there to help you find your own answers. And so when a leader can take on these coaching skills, almost like you can take a deep breath and take that big boulder off of the world off of your shoulders, because you're no longer responsible for the solution. It's really about how do we help others find and create their own solution. So thank you, Stacey. So as we are obviously going to use the International Coaching Federation, their definition of what coaching really is. And it is a thought-provoking and creative partnership that inspires clients to maximize their potential, often unlocking previously untapped sources of imagination, productivity, and leadership. And this has, none of this says we're teaching you. It's about unlocking that previously untapped imagination, creativity, and productivity. Thank you, Stacey. So when I tell people what coaching is not, this is the face that I get. This is my little blue. The fact that I was able to get that picture, I think, is pretty good. But I used to teach a class at Mayo Clinic, was a coaching class to leaders. And I would share that coaching wasn't feedback. And this was like, what do you mean? It's not feedback. So a lot of leaders think that they're coaching people when they're really giving feedback. Now, feedback can lead into a coaching conversation, but feedback in itself is not coaching. Teaching is not coaching. Teaching can also lead into some coaching. One of the things that I find is when you connect coaching with going to a class, like follow up with coaching, the amount of application and knowledge that it absorbs is exponential when people can have coaching after they've learned a new skill. Consulting, it's not consulting. That's telling people what to do, and that's not what we do as coaches. We help you to find your own solutions. And then advising. Now, many of us coaches and you as leaders want to advise because we know the right answer for that person, don't we? We want to advise all the time. I do as a coach. I have to sit on my hands to remind myself not to advise. But I always tell my clients, I said, I'm always going to think of something, but I'll tell you my thoughts at the end. But really and truly, what you come up with is what's going to work, because I might advise on something that's not going to work for the other person. So that's why coaching is so powerful. Yeah. Next slide. Thank you. So then now we're going to get into our skills, get into those coaching skills. So thank you. We'll go to the next slide. One of the things that I think is paramount to coaching, because in order for someone to be coached, it has to be a trusting relationship. And so in order to have that trusting relationship, we have to have the right mindset towards the people that we're coaching, especially our employees, especially those insubordinate employees. We have to think that they have a growth mindset. We have to believe that they are capable of change. We have to believe that they're capable of greatness and they can move forward and that they have greatness within them. If we don't, it will show up in your coaching and then your coaching won't work. I've had people go, well, what if somebody's uncoachable? And I have to come back with a question that we would say at Mayo Clinic all the time. Maybe they're not coached, maybe they're not able to be coached by you because there may not be a trusting relationship. You may go into that conversation thinking that they're not going to change. I can't tell you how many times I've been teaching leaders about how to take on coaching, but they think that the person will never change. And if you think they will never change, guess what? That shows up in your coaching. That shows up in the way in which you're interacting with them. They pick that up, your motive change. So we have to make sure that if we want to coach someone and leverage these skills, we have to get our mindset right. We have to believe that they are capable of change and are capable.
Yeah. And Mindy, you're sharing on this slide a book that you recommend. And I have a feeling that there are other resources that those of you who are listening today, perhaps you have a resource that has been impactful for you. And if so, I would love for you to share it, whether it's a person or a book or an article. Go ahead and open your chat box and let us know what you found helpful as you develop coaching skills and perhaps develop skills within your organization.
Thank you, Stacy. And so really, when we think about a growth mindset, towards someone, or when we have it for ourselves, it's individuals who believe that their talents can be developed through hard work, good strategies, and input for others. Fixed mindset is the opposite. They think if I don't get it right the first time, I'm never going to get it right. So why should I even try?
Yeah.
So that would be the difference between the two different mindsets. Highly recommend that book. Thank you, Stacy. And now Stacy gets to take the stage.
I'll take the lead for a few minutes. And as I do, I'd love for you to consider again that question at the beginning of our workshop today, that person or conversation that you're wanting to wrap back around to. Keep that in mind. And also keep in mind what it means to build a coaching culture. Often what we are concerned about as leaders is what we do. So we manage the logistics of what we do. We think about things like the performance, the outcomes, the bottom line. We focus so much on doing. And that is the management kind of a mindset. And the other side of this is the coaching mindset. And with the coaching mindset, some of what you would consider are, how do I influence others? How do I ensure that we see all the possible choices and options for this given scenario? And really, how do I connect into the being of these individuals that I am leading? So you'll see the value. It's not all one or the other, but there's a value of being able to leverage both and knowing when is the appropriate time to really focus in on how we do things versus what we do. I recall when I first started working as a manager, we onboarded a new team and I wanted to get to know them and their process a little bit. And so I met with the supervisor of that team and said, hey, tell me how you do this really complex check run. And she produced this sheet of paper and she handed it to me. And it said, press F1, press F2 twice, press F5. And it went on from there. And I looked at that and thought, okay, I could sit down and probably create this event online, but what is this that I'm doing? How, what is the story behind this? And I think that's just such a memory that I have because it demonstrates the importance of being able to tell people not just what to do, but why and how. So that's what we're going to talk about when we think about these three important coaching competencies. And here they are. I would encourage you to maybe take a few notes. You might head into a very low pain, very happy, joyful breakout room in a little while and practice some of these. There's no pressure. But here are some coaching competencies that we're going to discuss and practice. The first is active listening. Second is powerful questioning. And the third is building connection. And we'll start with the first. The first coaching competency of active listening. So I'm going to describe these 3 levels of listening. And in chat, I would like to challenge each one of you that's on to tell us in chat which level you typically find yourself operating within. Level 1, we would consider more self-absorbed. You're listening to respond and not to understand. It is not hard to find conversations like this. You can turn on any given news channel and watch debates between 2 people with opposing views and see that oftentimes, if they wait for a break in the conversation, it is merely to state their own opinion, not to build connection or understand. So level 1 is more of a self-absorbed approach to listening. Level 2 becomes more engaging. In a level 2 conversation, we're really seeing more responsiveness between 2 people. We listen, we wait for a pause, we summarize, and we try to understand and ask for clarification. That's level 2 listening. And level 3, perhaps it doesn't happen very frequently, but I bet all of you can remember a moment when you had a level 3 conversation. And when you're locked into level 3, active listening, it's not just what's being said, but also what's not being said. So you're listening for other cues. You're watching perhaps for nonverbal cues. You're listening for things like sighs or maybe some sense of some emotions that are coming out in the conversation. These can be really powerful moments of connecting. And this is called level 3 listening. So I'm looking out in chat and I see that some of you are responding. So hoping to reach that level 2 and sometimes get to level 3. I really like that, Katie. And level 2 minimum coaching, you go to level 3. That is definitely, those are the special moments that we have as coaches. And if we're being coached, those are really special moments. Level 2 is a great place to be. And I would say that's often where we are, is in level 2 listening. So thank you guys. Continue to put that information out in chat. That helps us see where you're at. All right. What about questions? Helen, level 1 at 10 p.m. with my kids. Yes, been there. All right. So what about questions? You'll see on this slide, there are all kinds of questions that we ask as managers and leaders. All of these are certainly fine. And certainly we can employ each one of these. I'll start at the bottom. Closed-ended questions. These are questions that we ask because we want to gather data quickly. It's a question that leads to a quick response. It helps us gather the information we need to make a decision. There are lots of times when we have to ask closed-ended questions. And clarifying questions next. These are questions that we ask just to confirm and show interest. Those clarifying questions help to demonstrate that we're on the same page with the person we're speaking with, and that can help to build connection. Open-ended questions. This is the challenge that Mindy and I would have for you as you leave today. How can I incorporate more open-ended questions? And it takes kind of for us to break a pattern, because chances are we ask more clarifying and closed-ended questions during the day than we do open-ended questions. We know as coaches that open-ended questions are really where the magic happens. It's really providing the opportunity for that other person to share the information that's meaningful to them, which allows us then to meet them where they are, to build those connections that become so powerful in the conversation. And here are some examples. If you're wondering, how do I incorporate open-ended questions? One that I like that's at the top of this slide is just simply, tell me more, which isn't technically a question, and I get that, but it is an opportunity for that person to elaborate. You know, that's interesting. Can you tell me more about that? Or I'm curious. Can you give me some more information? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. There are all kinds of open-ended questions that we can ask, and I suggest that you might have a couple of these in your back pocket so that when you find yourself in the pattern of closed questioning, that you can use one of these to kind of break yourself out into that mode of coaching. And many of you on the workshop today utilize open-ended questions. And I would love to hear if you have any powerful questions that you use that you found beneficial in your work. If you do, please add those to chat. And I see a question out there. What does it mean by the 3 dots? And that's just kind of a way for you to insert your own personalized questions here. Tell me more about, or I'm wondering about this, or I'm curious about this. And then you could fill in the rest of that question. Finally, we're building towards, through our listening and through our questioning, we are building skills to truly make connections with other people. And, I think one of the biggest burdens that leaders have, and maybe one that we don't realize until we're in the leadership role, is that, perhaps we think when we become a leader, when we become a manager, that will mean that everyone will listen to us and understand and do what we'd like them to do. And I'm sure if I asked each one of you if that was the case, you would all say, yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. The burden of leadership is truly that we have to learn languages for every single person we work with. We have to meet them where they are and build connections to them. And we do that by using these coaching skills. These are relational skills. We're asking open-ended exploratory questions. We're summarizing to show our understanding. We're using metaphors for interest and emphasis, and noticing any emotional shifts that are going on. And we're also encouraging ourselves to get curious, to kind of gauge our internal process, how we're interpreting the conversation, how we're moving through the conversation. We can be curious about our own reactions and also curious about that other person. So what we would love to do is a little bit of practice. And we have, let's see, Mindy, we have about 35 folks in the audience today. And I'm wondering, what do you think? Should we break into 2 groups?
Sorry, I was muted. Maybe we should practice once with you facilitating, and then we can go into 2 groups if we need to.
Okay. Well, I will ask for 2 volunteers. So let me stop sharing for just a moment because I want to make sure that I see any raised hands. So I need 2 volunteers just to read something that's going to show up on the screen. So you don't have to do anything more than that. Can I get 2 people to raise their hands and volunteer? All right, Jenny. Perfect. And I need 1 more person. Who's going to help Jenny out? All right, don't all answer at once. It's like too much for me to contain. Perfect. I see Marilyn. Marilyn, absolutely. And anyone else that wants to, you can do this again. So Jenny and Marilyn, go ahead and come off of mute. And if you're able to come on video, that's awesome. If not, that's okay. So Jenny and Marilyn. Now, Jenny, I'm going to give you the role of the employee, and that is in the white font. And Marilyn, you're going to have the role of the manager, and you're going to read what's in the yellow font. And I'd like for everyone else just to listen to this interaction, and then we'll talk about it. So Jenny, get us started.
I need to talk about my workload. I'm putting in 70 hours a week. I don't know what has to change, but something has to give because I'm exhausted and I have no work-life balance.
Gosh, Jenny, you do need to fix something or you will burn yourself out.
But what can I change? We are so busy and I just can't stop working.
Maybe it's a time management issue. I have a process that I can show you. It has worked for me in the past, so it should work for you too.
Well, I guess.
Here's a spreadsheet template. First, look back at the last few weeks and plug in how you spent your time each day. The spreadsheet tracks work hours and off hours, so make sure to put in all 24 hours for about 3 or 4 weeks. I will set up some time with you tomorrow afternoon and we can review your data.
All right. So let me ask you, Marilyn and Jenny. First, Jenny, how does that feel?
Familiar. Yeah, I think that I think it's a common discussion point for a lot of us, for sure. And I think everyone these days is constantly striving on, how do they balance what they need to accomplish in their workday, but also in their personal lives.
Yeah. So do you feel like you had the courage to take this issue to your manager, and do you feel like that concern was received well?
I do. I do. I think there was an effort to try and come up with a solution.
Okay. So I will come back to that in just a moment. Marilyn, how did that feel to you?
Well, I tried not to laugh because, especially when I got to the last response, because I thought, wow, so I'm going to now just kind of dump this process on Jenny that worked for me, that sounded really like a lot of details. And by the way, I only gave her 24 hours to do it. And so I don't know, it felt overwhelming for me to even say it. But
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally picture this whole scenario going down in a workplace that's very much work focused, so very performance minded, very much about just getting the work done, checking the boxes, right? And there's a place for that. But in the midst of all of that work and Jenny's 70 hours a week, she's struggling and she's hoping to get some relief. And instead of getting relief and understanding, it looks like she's getting a whole huge work assignment that has to be completed in 24 hours to recreate about 3 or 4 weeks of her time. And that may not be exactly what she was looking for. So we have another way of going through the same scenario using level 2 listening skills. So those of you who didn't volunteer the last time, now you see how easy it is, and no one was hurt in the making of that role play. So do I have 2 volunteers to read the screen the second time? All right, Katie. And maybe Jenny, you could read this time, you could read the part of the manager. Would you be okay with that?
Sure.
All right. So Katie, you're going to start off with what's in the white font for the employee, and Jenny, you will pick up the yellow font.
Great. Jenny, I need to talk about my workload. I'm putting in 70 hours a week. I don't know what has to change, but something has to give because I'm exhausted and I have no work-life balance.
That sounds tough. How can we work together on this?
Well, I want to hit our project deliverables on time, but Sarah told me I am too hands-on, and I think maybe I am micromanaging because I am stressed out. I don't know where to start.
What feedback did Sarah give you?
She said that when I check in so much, it makes her feel like I don't trust her, but how will I know she's on schedule?
So she says checking in too frequently makes her feel like you trust her less. I can sense that there is some tension between your work styles and hers. Do you want to stick with this example and brainstorm some options together?
Yes, I think that would help me a lot. I spent a lot of time checking on my team. If there's a better way to do it, I'm all in.
Okay. Katie, how did that feel for you?
I felt heard. I felt like there was an opportunity to work on something. I still kind of left going, okay, I'm hopeful, but how is this going to work for me? Like, we're working on it, but is this going to add more work? But I definitely felt heard.
Yeah. Jenny, what do you think about this manager response compared to the one that you got in the earlier role play?
Well, I think this one was felt a lot more open versus task orientated. I thought, I didn't know about the line about feeling tension. That seemed a little bit awkward to me as well. But maybe that could have been left out. I think you don't want to make it personal between two people. I think you're still more in the listening phase for that type of conversation.
Yeah, that's a definitely something that you would have to consider as you're in that moment. And you know, as the person who developed this role play, the tension is just merely, in this case, the tension that's already felt by Katie. So she's feeling the tension and expressing that there's some work style issues. And oftentimes as managers, I know I did earlier in my career, I wanted to solve the issue. And emotions are not problems to be solved, but yet we do have to show up in them as leaders and help people navigate through them. And that means that sometimes a lot of times we have to step into very tense interactions, and tension can be just that internal feeling of just something's not right. So how do we wrap words around these issues so that we can help coach people through them as a leader? Now, there is one more listening role play. So level 3 listening, which I'm sure you can imagine is going to go into that tension and the kind of that emotion piece of it a little bit more, because level 3 listening is a very complex way to be open to hearing from someone else. So do I have anyone who'd like to volunteer to wrap up these listening role plays? If we were at a workshop, I would just start volunteering you. Joe, yes. Joe, perfect. So who is going to role play with Joe today?
Don't everybody put your hand up at once.
Gosh, it's overwhelming. And Joe, you get to pick. Do you want to be the employee or the manager?
Let me get my hand down first. I will be the manager.
All right. So I need an employee. Let's see.
Well, I'm great to work for.
Oh, good, good. Katie, would you like to be the employee this time?
I'll be the employee. It's all good.
Thank
All
you.
right. Here we go. Let me stop again. Let me try that one more time. Okay. All right. So Katie, you'll get us started as
Okay,
the employee.
great. Joe, I need to talk to you about my workload. I'm putting in 70 hours a week. I don't know what has to change, but something has to give because I'm exhausted and I have no work-life balance.
That sounds tough. How can we work together on this? Well, that tells me you're feeling pretty stressed. Am I right?
I am so frustrated with my workload. I feel so out of control and it is impacting my family too. My partner pointed out today that we haven't finished a project I promised would be done 3 weeks ago. I'm tired. All night I wake up thinking of work and all our deliverables coming up.
Thank you for sharing. It sounds like you feel this pressure at work and at home.
Yes, I feel so burdened right now, just like a huge weight is sitting on me.
I understand that this conversation is difficult. Before we continue, I just want to acknowledge that you are showing vulnerability and am I reading this right? Am I supposed to be reading? I just want to make sure. Bad easy on the page before. By sharing this with me, you can trust me with this conversation. I also want you to know that what you are experiencing happens to a lot of managers as they gain responsibilities and have to start shifting their work style. In terms of workload, I think that together we can find ways to ease some of the burden you are feeling at work. I care about how things are going at home too. So the goal I have for you to feel like you have is for you to feel like you have a healthy work-life balance.
I'm feeling more relief already.
I am glad. Now, in terms of workload, where is the right place for us to start our conversation?
Okay. All right, everybody. So tell me, Joe, as you put yourself in that manager's shoes, could you see yourself having a conversation like this with an employee?
Yes.
And what do you see as you've watched these 3 levels of the role play? Which one do you feel like would be the most uncomfortable for a manager? It's a trick
I
question.
think the third one is probably most uncomfortable for some managers.
Yeah, and I think that's why we avoid that level of coaching and listening, is because it requires us to step out. You know, Mindy talked about those 3 hats
Yeah.
that leaders have, and the one that comes easiest is typically that management hat. And managers solve problems and fix things all day long. And this is a situation where you can't really solve it. So it's out of the comfort zone of the manager. But what do you think, Joe, if you enter in as a manager into some of that tension and some of that emotion, like what could you get out of that employee? What are some of the benefits that you might see? And others can jump in too, maybe put in chat. What are the benefits of having conversations similar to these?
There's a couple of layers. I think, right, the employee has to feel safe enough to be able to be vulnerable and say, hey, you know, I'm overwhelmed, whatever it is, and we're not worried about being judged like, oh, they're gonna think I just can't handle the work, right? But I think it really helps people have a dialogue, and it's, as they said, a weight off the shoulder. At least it now, my manager hears me. Now I can work toward a solution. I don't have to carry this burden and kind of keep suffering and stress. And like now I can kind of get the conversation out there and work towards, you know, feeling supported and making things better.
Yeah, I really like that. Anybody else have thoughts about the level 3 role play?
Well, don't we wish all of our leaders would be that way with us? I mean, if you really think about it as employees, this is the stuff that we wish our leaders would do for us. Think about what your employees wish that you would do for them.
Yeah. I know Brene Brown has a quote. I've heard her say something like, I'm going to paraphrase, but she's talking about vulnerability. And she says, you know, I want to see, I consider it strength when I'm working with a leader that displays vulnerability, but for some reason when I'm going to do it, it feels like weakness. So it's strength in you, but weakness in me. And somehow in all of this, we have to grapple with the fact that being a vulnerable leader is actually coming at leadership from a very strong position. Jenny, your hand's up.
Yeah, I think for me, the level 3 really represents an investment in one's time to help someone. And I think that's important, particularly for people that are struggling internally with the work-life balance demands. You know, it's not only being heard, but it's also receiving that somebody really wants to invest in helping them. So.
Yeah, thank you. And Marilyn?
Yes, as I'm listening to everybody and I'm thinking about when I was a manager and a leader, and also all my clients that I coach as a career coach, this is a very complex issue because you first, as the employee, has to believe that their manager truly wants to help them fix this problem, and it doesn't show them as someone who's weak, who can't just suck it up and work 70, 80 hours a week because the manager does that, because that's going back to the culture. So there's so many levels of this that I mean, it's as I said, it's a complicated issue, and that trust is built not just by what somebody says, but their actions and even their own actions. I mean, I worked in environments where managers were proud of how many hours they worked. They boasted about, hey, I've already worked 40 hours and it's only Wednesday. And so, again, that's the culture. And so, you know, and I was one of those who, you know, got caught up in that. And then, so going back to that, when we talk about trust, there has to be that culture throughout the organization, and that can't just be talked about. It has to be lived. I don't know. That's what
Yeah.
I wanted to share.
Yeah, I think you're pointing very well to the fact that there are benefits to building coaching culture. And sometimes I know in my past history as a leader, I had to build like a bubble of coaching within an organization that was more performance minded. And although that has benefits, it's not going to be fully realized within the whole organization. So it's really helpful. I think today we're talking about this throughout our symposium about how important building that culture throughout organizations is. But it is difficult work, and it's interesting because it starts with very small changes and shifts that we make as leaders. We can invite in a little bit of the culture and then watch it take hold. Trust is built in organizations with very small changes that are consistently made over time. And this is one of those areas that seems so easy, but at the same time, kind of daunting. So today, I would like to challenge you as you think back about that conversation that you need to have, or one that you wished you could have again. How could you watch listening, questioning, and building connections in a way that really holds space? And I love Jamie, what you said out in chat. It creates a safe space for more openness to share deeper thoughts and to openly problem solve. That's exactly creating that open space and shared space to be able to navigate some of these difficult issues. So Mindy, I will be happy to transition back to you at this point.
Sounds great. Thank you. All right. So one of the things that we want to go over with you is just a very high level coaching model. This was something that I created at Mayo Clinic because we needed to have something that was more pure coaching. And when we think about leadership and we think about the kind of leaders that we want to be, especially a coach-like leader, we're going to be the ones that are really inspirational. And we don't see ourselves as leaders. We see ourselves as influencers. And so the peer coaching goes very well for when leaders are using this, because when we think of ourselves as that servant leader, when we think about ourselves as that coach-like leader, we kind of put ourselves on the same level playing field when we're coaching someone, where I'm not coming from a position of power and authority. I'm coming down to where you are as a peer when I'm coaching you. And that goes back to that mindset again, goes back to that level of listening that we do as well. So really I wanted to create something high level, just something to get people to start acting. So that's why I called it the Act Peer Coaching Model. So the A stands for aim for greatness, C is create self-awareness, and T is take the steps. Next slide, please. So when we look at this and we look at some of the things that we've learned so far, we want to think about those open-ended questions. And those open-ended questions usually start with what, when, where, or how. Now, there's the why word in there, and there's a reason why we don't use the why word. That is because why tends to elicit a negative response in the receiver of your message. And so when we're coaching, we just want to stay away from that as much as possible. You'll notice in the questions that I give you, there's one question with a why in it, but use why very sparingly. So when we think about the three different pieces of the ACT peer coaching model, we have A, which is, how do we aim for greatness? So a question that would go for them to aim for greatness what would success look like? What makes this meaningful for you? Why is this important? So there's where you can use a why thing, or you can say, what makes this important for you? Then we want to create that self-awareness, help them to kind of see beyond the tunnel vision that they're having. Because typically when we're stuck, we're tunnel vision. And so what coaching helps them to do is to help remove that tunnel and see things from several different perspectives, except for that one. So it's what I use the what and the what. What do you think is getting in your way? What are you willing to do differently? What barriers are in your way? So you can come up with different things to really kind of help them think, where is this coming from? And a lot of times that's a good question. Where is this coming from? If you were to own 5% of this problem, what would it be? It's one of my favorite questions because a lot of people don't realize their own role in their problems. And then T, take the steps. How can you get to your goal? Who can support you? And when will you take that next step? So it's really about getting people to move from being stuck to going into action. Next slide. Thank you. So I am going to put in our chat the ACT Peer Coaching.
Just loaded it.
Oh, look at you. So good. So if you want to pull that up, this is our ACT Peer Coaching model. This is what you're going to be looking at when we're going to practice coaching. We're all going to get a chance to practice saying coaching questions. So you can see we've even given you some canned questions to ask. But again, these are just suggestions. We would invite you to create your own. So next slide. So when we think of exercise, and you guys have been doing this all along, so I want you to just, for those of you who haven't been thinking about some powerful questions, now's a good opportunity for you to add them to our space so that we can share them with other people. So here's an exercise that we have for you. You have a colleague who comes to you with feelings of burnout. Let's go back to our listening. We're working 70 hours a week. We're working too much. What powerful questions might we go back and ask that employee during that listening exercise that can help them really kind of create and see things from a different view? So I would like to invite you to start putting some open-ended questions into the chat. And I'm going to tell you this right now. If it's do you like coaching? If the question you ask is a yes or no answer, then that's not going to be a coaching question. So let's see. Will you please show the slide with the questions again, quick and fussy? But let's think about it. Let's go back to that. Yes, let's go back to that scenario and looking at these questions. What questions might we ask our employee in that level 3? What would success look like for you? What is this situation costing you? I love that question.
Great question.
Great question, Joe. Some other questions. I think I want to start calling on people who haven't put their picture up. What would you need to change in order for you to feel differently? Like that.
Yeah, that's a good
What
one.
are you willing to do differently? Sometimes it's that one too.
Yeah.
You got some other ones? Now you guys are going to be doing this in front of other people. You want to practice as much as possible. What does well-being for you look like? I like that question. How will you know when you feel less stressed? Great question. Okay, I think we got some good questions here. So they look like they are ready to go for our coaching practice. If you can you go to the next slide for me, please?
I will. The video. Mhm.
So next, what I want to show you is what does coaching really look like? How does that look like in action? Because a lot of the times, like you go to these classes and you may like see us as coaches, but how I am speaking, like I talk a lot when I'm speaking. When I'm coaching, I listen a lot more. And so we're going to watch this video. Now there's going to be little prompts at the bottom that because this goes with a different coaching model. Our purposes for today is just to listen and see where are those aim for greatness? What were those aim for excuse me. What were those aim for greatness questions? What are those creating self-awareness questions that she used? And then what might be some take the next action questions? So as you're watching this video and you see some of those questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. So we have them when we can use when we go into our coaching practice.
All right.
So let's play the video.
And Mindy, I'm looking at you, so just give me a thumbs up that you can hear the volume.
Okay.
Now you're going to see a demonstration, a short demonstration, as if we were in the hallway. We're working together. There's a conversation maybe that's happened previously around this, and we're running into each other in the hallway. Lori is my employee, and he's got something to chat about.
All right. Hey, Signe, boy, I'm so glad I caught you.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm on my way to a meeting. I've only got about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, can I have the 5 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
You know that project I'm working on?
Okay, yep.
We talked about it before. It's going well, but I'm really having trouble with Frank.
Okay. Okay. And what's the trouble that you're experiencing?
Well, first of all, we seem to clash. Like it almost feels like anytime I say something, he always seems to have to say something contrary, is what it feels like.
Okay, so contrary or one-upmanship, is it?
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I just started to notice that, like when we're offline, we seem to get along, but when we're in the room together, it's like, I don't know, but like he's different, and I'm just noticing, and I'm starting to.
So what does that bring up for you?
Well, it's bringing up for me. Wow, I wonder if I've done anything wrong.
Okay.
Have I somehow pissed him off?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I guess that's
So it sounds like confusion. Sounds like there's a place of confusion.
definitely confusion, and I'm starting. I'm starting to be reluctant to speak up.
Oh, in the meetings.
Yeah.
So you're starting to hold back.
Yeah.
And kind of that's a big impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know who you are. You're someone that speaks up and has an opinion, and I want you to know that those opinions, they're really valued around here. So it's really important that you actually find that way to have your voice in this situation.
Yeah, but I don't. Yeah, I get. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you need in order to feel like you can really be yourself in those meetings?
It's so obvious, but I guess I'm noticing I'm even reluctant to speak it. But I need to talk to Frank.
Yeah. What is it you need to say to him?
The censored or the uncensored version?
Give it to me straight.
Like, what's up? Why do you keep shutting me down? That's what it feels like.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how do you think he's going to respond to that? Actually, here, let me tell you. I mean, so maybe you're giving me the uncensored version.
Yeah.
And maybe there's something I'm picking up about, like, well, to possibly give it to him in a way that he's going to be more receptive to it. Because.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Because I'm almost feeling like I'm attacking him.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do.
Yeah, it's what you want to do. Yeah, great noticing. And what's the thing that you can say to him that's going to enroll him into having that conversation with you?
Well, I guess the first thing would be to just say, "Hey, Frank, can we talk about just maybe grab lunch or something?"
Great. Yeah. Can we have a
Yeah.
conversation?
Yeah. Because actually, what's coming up as we're talking is, as I said to you, we actually do get along outside of the room.
Great. So great idea to have it as a conversation outside the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great insight.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so have that conversation with him. What are the key points that you want to cover in it?
A little lost here because I keep wanting to say, so Frank, why do you keep shutting me down? So I want to go.
Right, and we know that's not going to be effective.
Yeah.
What's the thing you want to get out of it?
That every time I open my mouth, I don't feel like I'm being somehow attacked or judged.
Right, so you want to have a sense of options, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Doesn't feel like it didn't quite land.
But something is coming up for me. I could try this. I'm a little reluctant to, but I might say, maybe instead of like attacking him, say, "Hey, Frank, I'm noticing this is happening.
Yeah.
Have I done? Oh, I could. Okay. I
see
could
where
do
this is
it
going.
that
This is
way.
great.
Yeah, I could say something like, "So have I done anything wrong?"
Right. So you can actually almost turn it
and
around.
open up the conversation that way.
Super.
Yeah.
And I heard you say a minute ago that you're feeling a little bit reluctant. Here's what I know about you. When you share what's really going on for you, it has a big impact. Like you're the kind of person who people stop and listen to. So yeah, really, I'm really excited that you're choosing, consciously choosing to make this decision about how you're going to work with Frank and work this out. Yeah, good. Okay, so when are you going to have this conversation with him?
I'm gonna actually call him today and set it up for later in the week.
Okay, will you drop me an email after you've had the conversation with him?
I will.
Okay, and if you don't, like if it's come to the end of the week and you haven't had the conversation, fire me an email.
I'll let you know.
Just to let me know that you didn't have it, but when you will have it. Great. I look forward to hearing what happens.
Thanks for the 5 minutes.
Okay, good. Now you're going to...
All right. So we got a lot of really, really great questions. That was some good coaching. Like even he kind of came up and found something on his own. And so thinking about that, like I have like lover. So what were some things that you saw the coach do that was effective? This is where you get to turn on your mic and your camera and play with us a little. Acknowledgement, affirming. What else? What did you see the coach do that was really well, that made that go well? Gus.
Dale, I see that you came off of mute.
So
I
Gus.
would say she was doing quite a bit of reflecting back, and also saying things that would build the confidence of some things that she knew as she was listening. So that reflecting, active listening.
Yep. Nice. Gus.
She did a lot of acknowledgement and recognizing of his feelings, which I think helped turn the conversation from what is that person doing wrong to what is it within myself that I can start to change or adapt to make the situation better.
Yeah. Absolutely. Deb said made the time in the middle of a busy day. Empathy. What else did the coach do really? We had some really good questions. When will you have a conversation with him? I know that this is who you are. So again, like when we practice coaching, we really do just like start asking questions, but it's not just the questions, it's everything that goes around those questions. And as we start, sometimes it's just about, I've got these questions Mindy gave me and I'm going to go through these. And that's okay. And as a leader, if you want to do that, that's okay. Be like, hey, I want to try this new coaching thing. Let's try it. What do you think? Because when you start learning coaching skills, you got to let people know, because they're going to be like, who is this person and where did they come from? Nancy, do you have a question for us?
Yeah. So what I noticed in that interaction is that there was a cultural disconnect. So that technique might necessarily apply in that situation. But for me, being a minoritized woman, that I think that her tone was a little rushing, like she lacked a little bit of patience. She was kind of forcing me into a space. In a sense, that's how I interpret it. Like I would have required a slower cadence in her reflection, and also allowing me through because obviously he was challenged with articulating his thoughts. She kind of pushed him a little bit, and kind of filled in the gaps for him. And so just for me culturally, I think it may necessarily be received by certain cultural groups as being a little impatient.
Sure. And it could be the relationship that she has with him. And so we have to, but that's a very great point, Nancy. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, and I think, Mindy, that might too, what Nancy shared might change how maybe you would redirect or kind of set a stage if you felt like the conversation with the manager wasn't going as well as you'd like, or wasn't being approached in the right way, to be able to put words around that and see if you could help them steer the conversation.
Yeah. Well, and what would we do differently than what she did? That's a great question. But how might we, so maybe you don't feel so rushed. I mean, but she is walking down the hallway and he grabbed her for 5 minutes. So we have to think about that again. But What are some other questions that you think we could have asked? And Jen Ransdale said she made a great catch when she said, I didn't see that I see that didn't land right for you. And that's what we do as coaches. Like, we recognize when things don't land with people. And then Jeffrey says she asked for the uncensored version to understand the issue, then pivot away from the uncensored version to help him visualize how to approach the conversation. I love that. I do that with my clients all the time. Because I'm like, okay, give me the uncensored version. What is it that you really want to say? Curse words and all. Because I give them that gives them an opportunity to get it all out. Okay, and how might you say the same thing, but in a more professional way? That's going to actually get the other person to respond or become engaged. So very good questions. And then, set a goal for accountability. Emmy, that's great. And then Dale was like, she asked what he wanted at the end of the conversation. So all really great things. Now, what we want to do is if you can look at your, look at the little handout that I sent you. And is there any questions in that handout that you think she could have used?
I'm putting that right back out in chat one more time. If you didn't pick it up last time, you'll see it loading and you should just be able to click on it and download it.
Thank you. What's the story you're telling yourself when your colleague interacts differently in a meeting when you are in a one-on-one situation? What do you want for the relationship? Good questions. What else? Good thing, Dale and Tom. Now, is anybody willing to be coached? And then we get to all go around and ask you questions. And if you don't, that's fine, but it might be fun for us to coach someone. What internal hurdles might get in your way? Anybody just dying to be coached today? We might be able to practice a little bit with you. And if not, that's okay. We can just keep asking for these. What other obstacles might get in your way? So again,
I'll volunteer. I'll volunteer myself.
Okay, awesome. So here's how we're going to work it. Katie's going to give us the Twitter or the X version of her issue, something that she's stuck on. And then I need some people that are willing to turn on your camera, like we need people to participate and ask some of these questions so you get a chance to be the coach. Do we have any volunteers for people who want to be the coach? And if you are, just put your video on. And Katie, you may not get coached today. Or you know what? Maybe what we can do.
Oh, Joe's here.
Joe's here.
Joe stood up. There we go.
Well, and then I think we have Stacy's a coach, Jennifer's a coach, Dale's a coach. Like, we're all coaches here, so we can do a little demo live for Katie. How about that? All right, Katie, give us your Twitter version of your story.
I have a fantastic team member who is always a day late with projects. I ask, hey, can you meet this deadline? And the answer is always yes. And then it's only a day, but it's become habitual. It used to be every once in a while. And now I kind of laugh when she gives me the response because I know she won't make it. And it's frustrating to have somebody so good that sort of is holding themselves back with this little issue.
All right. Thank you so much. So we have someone with an issue. They're not turning in their stuff. So my first question to you is, I'm looking at my ACT peer coaching model. What would success look like for you, Katie?
If that team member turned in the assignments when they said they were going to turn them in.
Okay. So now we want people, just raise your hand if you want to ask a question, and then we can put you in order. And then each person gets one question to ask Katie. So who wants to go next? I think Jen Ransdale does. You're muted, Jen.
Wait, hold on. Okay, here I come. I'm sorry. I would ask, so I'm just curious, we're helping Katie, to try to work with this person.
Yes.
Okay. So
He wants them to turn their stuff in on time.
So one question I think I would ask is to say, I would have a discussion opening up and saying, hey, what do I really, your work is good, but I'm wondering what's holding you back from turning it in on time. I'd get to the root cause.
I like that.
Yeah.
She says, I'm wondering. You notice how she used that at the beginning, so that kind of keeps it from being attacking.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry, Katie, you can answer.
Okay, I think that's a great suggestion. I think in our next one-on-one, I'll lead with that. I've noticed maybe this is happening, and I'm wondering where the roadblock is for you, or what's holding you back.
Joe.
Along those lines, I heard you mention that it was something that was happening once in a while, and now it has become more frequent. So what do you think has changed?
Well, that's something to think about. Maybe there's just more on this team member's plate, and maybe I should be asking her, hey, I've noticed that sometimes the deadlines aren't working, but you have a lot going on. How can I help with that?
Good question. Marilyn.
So Katie, why is this so important to you?
Oh, thanks, Marilyn. I think it's almost a domino effect. And so what comes up for me in the conversation is, while it's only a day late or 2 days late, it's become so frequent that it has become a norm. And I think that's kind of from a standard standpoint. I just want to make sure there's always the exception, but now we're getting into the norm territory. And I think that might be cause for some reshuffling of priorities or understanding the importance of the projects, not to me, but to the greater organization.
Deb.
Thank you. Yeah, Katie, I'm wondering what changes have you addressed in your own expectations, and how have you communicated? What changes have you made in your communication style and deadline expectations to help her better understand the impact it was having on you and your success?
That's a great question. I don't think I have been very good at articulating. I sort of raised the same question. So, hey, I noticed that we didn't get the goals last week. Can you make that happen? Is this something that could happen by Friday? And the answer is yes. And yet I still didn't get the goals. And so perhaps that's a better way to set it up, is to be able to say, I've noticed specifically when it comes to the goals, can you tell me what roadblocks stood in your way and how can I help you with that? I think it's really important in the greater organization. These were due a month ago and we've allowed it to lapse, and it just is not really reflective of our team.
Thank you. That sounds great.
Good question. Dale, you've got your hand up.
Yes. I'm wondering, Katie, how do others perceive her?
That's really an interesting one. I think others perceive that she is a very good team member, and from an external lens, she produces amazing work. She really does. But sometimes when that work, I start to get nervous when we have deadlines. We have a lot of deadlines stacking up for deliverables, and that 1 or 2 day lag, I'm concerned that we lose our own credibility. And maybe that's something I need to be able to say, hey, you've done great. Our whole team has done great, but I'm worried about the credibility of our team. And by these things being late, we will miss our deliverable date.
And I wonder how could you make it personal to her? Because what's important to her is her credibility important. So I wonder Katie, how does she perceive her credibility?
That's a good question. I think it is important to her. I think she really does want to show up as a very helpful individual. And perhaps
Mm,
tying that to, I know how important it is to you to support these centers.
yeah.
When we're going to be late, we're not supporting them at all. And I know that that's not something that any of us really want on the team.
Good question, Dale. I'm gonna move to Maryland because we all get one question. I know Dale just wants to get in and keep asking questions.
Oh, good. I love it.
Do you want me to ask or already
Yes,
asked?
go
Yeah,
ahead,
Marilyn, what
go
do you
ahead,
have for
Marilyn.
me?
No, these are all great questions. Katie, so how have you helped her understand her impact, not only on her performance, on her personally, but also the greater organization?
So I do quite often, and I coach other people in this for the why, right? So why is this important and why do we care? And I do think that I quite often will, and I always ask in one-to-ones, what is it like? What do you need to know? And how can I support that learning? How can I give you more information globally that relates to your role so you understand? And I think in this one, I think it's just maybe asking more questions. Hey, how would it be? I know that some people aren't providing information to you, but how, switching it around, maybe like, I don't know, maybe doing some role playing. How does this affect all of us? How does this affect how do you think this might affect my credibility or the team's credibility when this doesn't happen?
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of a, how does this, or what could we do as a team? Do we need to plan better? Do we need to cushion the time? What are some of your ideas so that we don't end up in this situation again?
Good.
Mindy, I see a question from Helen, and Helen, maybe you can come onto audio real quick. What are you willing to do differently? Is this a question for Katie?
Yes, I was just thinking excuse me, I'm not feeling my best. In terms of Katie, instead of just focusing in on the person that is not meeting the deadlines, just asking Katie, so if you could bottom line the impact, what would that be?
Yeah, so maybe it's a matter of saying, we have a lot of graduations coming, we have a lot of events coming, and we have promised to deliver this material. If we don't, how do you think they're going to view our team? How do you think the people, and how will that affect the trust that we have built?
Yeah. And Marilyn asked, I like this question. What if you were her manager? How would you handle this?
Right. So ask her if she were the manager, right? Switch it around.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So, because I am her manager. So, and I do try to always, I try to, live up to my coaching, even with the people so it's, hey, there's a real example. She is going to be bringing somebody on the team. So I could use that. Somebody will be reporting to her. Hey, soon somebody's going to report to you. So you're going to have some of these challenges too. And this might be a great way for us to practice as you are increasing your leadership in the organization. How might you deal with it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a real living example.
Yep. And I like Dale's question because this goes along with my favorite question is, what role are you playing in the lack of meeting deadlines? So if you were going to own 5% of this problem, what would it be?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I think that I would own 5% of it by contacting on Friday and simply saying, so I sort of let it roll off. Maybe I need to contact on Thursday and say, hey, we agreed on this deadline for tomorrow. I'm just making sure that you don't have any challenges in meeting that. So I'm giving her a little prompt, but I'm also asking her, so if she needs to adjust, I'm giving her that opportunity to do that.
Yeah. So how are you feeling about where we are in your coaching right now?
I think really good. I think there have been some great suggestions. I think two of the big things that I saw were giving her the opportunity to practice her future leadership that's coming up was super helpful. I think kind of that question that Dale raised, what role? Well, maybe I need to be more proactive in the reminder part of it and holding accountability instead of saying, hey, well, we agreed on it, but you just didn't do it. Well, how am I going to hold accountability? And I think those are both really good, actionable things I can take away from this conversation.
Nice. So usually at the end, I say, what did you learn about yourself and what did you learn about your situation? And I think you just said that. But how are you going to hold yourself accountable? And when do you plan on having this conversation?
Well, interestingly enough, we have a one-on-one on Wednesday, and I had this in my notes. And I think it's a real opportunity to address this on Wednesday and to say, hey, I want to be here to support your future learning as a leader. And so I want to talk a little bit about where we've been at, because I think I need to support more. What are your thoughts on that? And then how will you do this moving forward as we are bringing a new team member on? I think it's a teachable moment there.
Yeah. Suli, did you have something to share? I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
It's okay. I was going to ask Katie, and what you said about accountability is perfect, but I would ask her, how would you hold yourself accountable? Is there something that you would like me or the team to do to assist you in holding yourself accountable for the deadline?
That's a great suggestion. So much to like, hey, I could remind you the day ahead. Is that helpful? Or is there some other way you'd like to be held accountable to this?
Or how you want to be held accountable?
Yeah, that's a good question. Can we give a round of applause for Katie and everybody else? Thank you so much. We are coming towards the end of our session. We want to just take a minute to open it up for any questions that you might have before we review our last few slides. So as Stacy pulls the slides up, we've got love the idea of setting checkpoints, always set checkpoints. How would you hold her accountable? Those are good questions. So really, we always want you to continue this conversation and take what you've learned and share it with other people. So as a personal reflection, how can I use coaching to support my team and improve our work environment? And then let's talk about it with our team and colleagues. So again, where can we succeed in promoting coaching within your organization? And then what might be the barriers that would come up to bring this into your organization? Because our first session was all about, creating that coaching culture. Whatever the culture is of your top person, your CEO, is going to be the culture of your organization. And if they're not into coaching, then you're not going to end up getting a coaching culture. So really, it's about how do we share this and share the impact that coaching can have on leaders and well-being. Next slide. So one of the things that I got to do a plug for an article that I wrote. My last name used to be Gillis, so there is an article with the it doesn't have like the actual. We'll send this to you. But wrote a paper called Utilizing Coaching to Develop Women Physician Leaders. Wrote this while I was at Mayo Clinic. Really talks about the plight of women physicians and just women leaders to boot. So, and why we can use coaching as a way to develop them instead of the normal go take a class. So that's what this paper is about. These are some recommended books. We will also send this to you in our follow-up. Next slide, please. These are just some references. And then I think at the end, it's just, thank you. We appreciate you. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your engagement with us because it's very tough to be here and not have people engaged. So we're very happy that you engaged. We had a great time. And we do hope that you take this back and you tell people about your experience and about coaching, and you help us to really get the word out about what coaching can really do, especially when leveraging those skills as a leader. Thank you, Jennifer. Jennifer just put a little evaluation into the chat. We appreciate all of your time today, and I'm going to pass it over to Stacy to give her final thought.
Thanks. And Jennifer, try that link one more time. I don't think it went out to everyone in the chat. I appreciate that. And we are so happy to have you here. We're going to take a break. And then if you're hanging out for the last segment, it is after our lunch break. So we will pick up right at 2 o'clock with our final symposium segment. And Jennifer, do you want to kind of give some insight into what's coming?
Yeah, so I'm going to stop the recording now.